Oh, ride 'em, cowboy. Jump on your horse and fly with us. You can ride a unicorn, you can ride a regular donkey, or you can ride a thoroughbred horse. Welcome aboard to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime of full impact mindfulness, where we challenge people and the only price of admission is honesty, open-mindedness, and the willingness to try. I'm your host, Jim Ellermeyer, a behavioral health therapist, and today I'm joined by my sometimes partner and good friend, Alexandra Sasha Zeleznik. Welcome aboard, Sasha.
Well, I'm happy to be here, Jim. And yes, if it causes confusion, I go by Sasha, not Alexandra, just so we make that clear.
Well, sure, of course.
But I'm really excited to be here and talk a little bit with you about, maybe unicorns or thoroughbred horses, but and how they might make our life better.
Well, when we talk about what the type of wellness that we envision, which is holistic wellness, mind, body, and spirit, we incorporate all three modalities into the wellness of a person. As we often say, Sasha, there is no one medicine, there's no one yoga, there's no one energy medicine, there's no one chiropractic, there's no one talk therapy that really can cure anybody. What we try to do is mix and match and be like artists. And the people, they're the canvas, and we help them paint a beautiful picture of themselves. And sometimes it's different type of shadings, different type of things. So what we offer is lifestyle changes and lifestyle enhancements. We have no desire to change anyone because we're all spiritual beings. We just happen to be having a human experience. And I was so interested when you showed me your capstone project for Mount Union, which was equine therapy. Could you tell us a little bit about your background first?
Sure. So by trade, I guess I'm a psychiatric physician assistant. And of course, that's how I know Jim, the universal line for us to meet and create great things. So prior to all of that, I was always a visionary. I wanted to know why people thought the things they thought, why they did the things they did. And despite that, I was just an observer of life. I wasn't quite a participant in life growing up.
That's quite a telling statement. I was an observer of life. I was not a participant. Could you explore that a little further?
Actually, as part of mindfulness, I was just teaching this class last week. There's, observe, describe, and participate. And we do a whole lot of observing when we're watching TV, but we never feel like we participate in the conversations that we witness. So that's kind of how life can be when you're in an observing mind. You don't feel like you fit in, perhaps, or know what to say in the conversation. So you just kind of soak it all in, and you can learn a lot that way. But it's a whole lot more fulfilling once we find an avenue to participate.
So when we find our passion, the Japanese have a concept called ikigai, and iki means life and gai means purpose. So that's to find your life's purpose. And when somebody finds a life's purpose, then they're on their way to fulfillment and being happy. Goals and ambitions. Most people, we often talk about time traveling, you and I. Do we not?
Oh, absolutely.
So at some people, they sit and they wonder what's going to do with my life, where am I at? And that's called existential dread. I'm sure that we run into many people like that. However, just the standard line of, well, maybe this molecule will help you, or, well, we'll come and we'll talk to you, or you talk to us. However, you developed a different venue, a different avenue where you go, which is, I find, extremely interesting and extremely impactful in people's lives. Could you talk a little bit about what your passion is?
Yes. And so that kind of takes me back, I guess, to my little observer self. So when I was young, I didn't ask for anything. My mom said I was like perfect. I was always silent and I just did what she wanted. And then I was 8 years old and I went to a barn for the first time.
You were a Stepford child. Okay.
Yeah, I guess. I went to the barn, and suddenly after that, she said I began asking for one thing repetitively. I wanted to go back to the barn. And, she thought, people told her that I was a little odd prior to that. And then the second time we went to the barn, I said, oh, I wish that they could bottle this smell. And then she knew I was definitely odd. And so, ultimately, going through riding and learning how to ride and being around the horses, I went from an observer to a participator, and the horses were the avenue for me to do that. They listened to me even when I wasn't speaking.
So the horses listen to you without you speaking, without you verbalizing something. Let's stay there for a moment. Please talk about that.
Yeah, so horses are incredible at being attentive to body language. They are herd animals by their own nature, and their brains are actually incredibly limbic. So what that means is we all of us higher level mammals have a part of our brain that is limbic, and that's our emotional center. And horses are predominantly limbic, where people have more cognitive reasoning and cortical functioning than horses do, but that makes horses incredibly sensitive to emotional states of other horses, their own emotional states, and
Hmm.
then also other animals that surround them, including people. So they like very calm, steady emotional states. The more reactive that we are one way or another, either fearful or aggressive, they get uncomfortable and they make it known that they're uncomfortable. And when a 1,300 pound animal makes it known that they're uncomfortable, you can't quite miss it.
So what you're getting across to us is that horses are more, equines are more emotional artists. Sometimes what we like to talk about here is we refer to most males by the way of their upbringing and training and orientation is that they deal with thoughts and feelings like a child using a crayon on a piece of paper with one hand. However, we view females as being like artists with emotions and feelings, painting beautiful masterpieces with depth and color and feeling and meaning. So, would that translate into a horse?
Well, I guess both male and female horses are pretty emotional.
Hmm.
But I can definitely say that maybe female horses are a little emotional, and a lot of women connect with horses
Hmm.
more than men in human standpoint. But that hasn't really been historical. That's just current
Okay.
culture. I think we all have emotions, men and women. Maybe just women are better at expressing them. So that can be a sort of an avenue for connection to horse and human.
So the horses have more of a understanding and have empathy. Was that what you're trying to say toward people? Do they feel the feelings?
So yes, they feel the feelings, but they I guess wouldn't give necessarily empathy. They are making requests from us to be calm yet confident leaders. So as I was saying, they don't like either extreme of aggression or a fearful state, like submission. They want you to be right down the middle. So in a way they can kind of become a biofeedback machine that tells
Mm.
us where to be where to be effective, because they'll only listen to us if we're in the right emotional state, and consequently and conveniently, I guess, that is the same emotional state that makes us more effective in dealing with people as well, getting what we want, making requests, and earning respect.
So could you give us some of experiences out of your own life when you've come into the barn and you've encountered your horses, let's say in various stages of emotional distress or happiness or calmness? Give us some of the horses' reactions.
So I had a horse that I used to call the humbler because if you would come into the barn in too much of an aggressive state or a too highly confident state, man, she would let you know real quick who's bigger. And there were a lot of people that she wouldn't even tolerate. And yet, the smallest little child that knew nothing, she'd just kind of let them, be kind to her, and she'd be nice and gentle with them. Not that she was ever dangerous to other people, but she wouldn't listen to them, and she'd, not do as they requested, and it would humble them.
So if somebody was loud and boisterous and maybe a little bit demanding and maybe quite full of themselves when
Correct.
they came in, the horse would say, "I'd prefer not to be in your company."
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I actually tried to sell her once. I ended up keeping her till she died because she jumped for me every time I got on her. That was her favorite thing to do. And I guess somebody came and they were, at least they thought, quite a proficient rider, and they were a little bit too pushy. They didn't request, they demanded from her. And she would not walk over a pole on the ground for them. They thought I was an incredible liar, that she was a good jumper. And I got back on her, and what do you know? Over she went.
Okay. You're going to have to really educate us. Does the horse reflect the emotional state of the other person, or?
So getting into the more specifics of equine therapy outside of my own experiences, they related a lot to attachment theory, and affect mirroring is one of the biggest things that people talk about. You'll hear quotes, the horse is the mirror to the soul. And it's because they are incredibly responsive to that deep inner state. So for people, we can put on a mask and, show a little fake smile that everything's fine, where a horse, whether we don't really know actually if it's through scent or through incredible attention to body language, but they can read right through all of those fake smiles. And if somebody isn't confident or is fearful, a horse will often become either fearful as well, or they'll feel like they need to take over the situation since the anxious person is incompetent, and then they'll become more domineering. So then we learn how to interact in a social setting, because honestly, that's what happens with people too. We all live in this submission, dominance in much more complicated terms in people than in horses, but it's the same sort of concept that we can learn how to interact in appropriate social manners to earn both respect and appreciation.
So one of the concepts and one of the benefits of group therapy is that you can try out new behaviors in a safe environment where you were going to either get positive feedback, maybe learn how to do different things. Is that what you're kind of saying? Okay,
yes, absolutely.
Talk more about that. That's interesting.
The nice thing about horses is that they are in the present moments. When we talk about mindfulness and time traveling, they just don't fit together. Horses don't really time travel. They're exactly in that moment for the most part. So we can have perhaps a little boy that is too overly enthusiastic around his peers, so they just try to avoid him, and he doesn't understand why.
And overly enthusiastic is?
Maybe a little bit aggressive or in your face or hyperactive, as I guess they term it. So he doesn't really know why he doesn't have any friends among his peers. And we take him to the barn and he sees a horse, and in his usually overly enthusiastic self, he runs up, hands in the air, wanting to pet its face, and it throws its head up and, is deterred by his aggression. He can come back and try again in a minute, and the horse is there responding appropriately as long as he behaves appropriately. Whereas when we have peer-to-peer interactions, we don't often get that opportunity for second chances, because in humans, we make judgments, and then those judgments are held to us.
So you're talking, that's a key word that you just said, judgment. And one of the things, Sasha, that you and I, when we do these kind of groups and put things out, is one of the most challenging things about this mindfulness aspect is to take what we would call a non-judgmental stance. So are you trying to tell us that the horse can take a non-judgmental stance?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So horses are Zen masters.
Yeah, they are mindfulness masters, literally.
Well, it's just like a cat. A cat is not worried about the mouse that it caught yesterday or the dinner that it's thinking about tomorrow. It's right here and it's right now, like what we always talk about on this show. What time is it? Well, it's right now. Where are you at? Well, you're right here. And so you're talking about the horses being right there.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.